Hello. In 2006, a globally shocking case occurred in Malaysia involving an extremely brutal and unprecedented crime. Behind this case lay far-reaching connections, allegedly involving even the Prime Minister of Malaysia at the time. Although this was not officially a suspended case, it felt like one. The perpetrators were arrested and convicted, but capturing the killers did not mean the case was fully solved. Was there a mastermind manipulating events behind the scenes? To this day, the full motive and truth remain unclear, buried within struggles for power and influence. So, what exactly happened that year? Let us turn back time to 2006 and piece together the details of this case. Malaysia, located in Southeast Asia, is relatively close to China. Therefore, its population structure includes more than 20% ethnic Chinese. The capital city, Kuala Lumpur, is not only Malaysia's most populous city, but also its largest. Known for its beautiful scenery, Kuala Lumpur is a rare and beloved tourist destination. Yet today's story takes place right here. On October 20th, 2006, a young woman named Altantuya Radna went to the Mongolian embassy in Thailand to report that her cousin had gone missing in Malaysia. Since Mongolia does not have an embassy in Malaysia, after reporting the case to Malaysian police, Radna rushed to Thailand to seek help. At first, the embassy staff did not take the disappearance too seriously, as missing persons cases like this are common. However, when Radna told the staff that her cousin's name was Altantuya Shaariibuugiin, their attitude changed immediately. The receptionist urgently asked what had happened. Radna explained, "Yesterday, my cousin told me she was going to meet someone and asked me to wait at the hotel. Before leaving, she told me, if I don't return by midnight, report it to the police immediately." Hearing this, the embassy staff sensed that the situation was unusual and serious. They promptly reported it to their superiors and began coordinating efforts to search for Altantuya. So, who exactly was Altantuya Shaariibuugiin, that merely hearing her name made the Mongolian embassy take the matter so seriously? Altantuya Shaariibuugiin, whom we will refer to as Aya, was born in 1978 to a middle-class family in Russia. Her parents were Mongolian but worked in Russia. Her father was a university professor, and her mother a teacher. Aya spent her childhood being educated in Russia. Growing up in such an environment, Aya became fluent in multiple languages. Her native Mongolian came naturally, but she also mastered Russian and English at school. Later, she even studied Chinese and French. Aya had an exceptional talent for languages. In addition to her linguistic abilities, Aya was remarkably beautiful. Everyone who met her praised her for her star-like appearance and charisma. In 1990, Aya's family moved back to Mongolia from Russia. After returning home, Aya became infatuated with Madai, a Mongolian singer who was then the lead vocalist of the popular band Black Rose, a group idolized by countless young Mongolian women. Perhaps Aya's exceptional beauty also astonished Madai, as he soon became captivated by the young admirer. In 1996, at just 18 years old, Aya had a whirlwind marriage with Madai. The news of the famous singer's marriage was a major event in Mongolia, widely reported by newspapers and media. Photographs of the couple frequently appeared in the press, and Aya, young, beautiful, and radiant, quickly transitioned from an ordinary girl to the center of attention in Mongolian entertainment circles. However, as many had anticipated, this marriage did not last long, despite the birth of their child. Although they eventually divorced, Aya's allure and public image remained untarnished. With her remarkable beauty and intelligence, Aya secured her place within the elite social circles of Mongolia's famous personalities, building her own reputation and network. At one point, Aya even considered a career in modeling and traveled to France to attend modeling training. For unknown reasons, this endeavor was not successful. While frequently mingling with Mongolia's upper-class society, Aya met her second husband, the son of a renowned designer, Kuyog. Kuyog was a true second-generation wealthy individual, and their marriage once again brought Aya into the spotlight within Mongolia's elite circles. Through this marriage, she became acquainted with numerous high society figures. However, history often repeats itself in surprising ways. This second marriage, too, ended abruptly, despite the couple having a child together. 2 consecutive failed marriages did not hinder Aya's career development. Leveraging her many connections, Aya began working in the clothing export business. She frequently traveled to upscale destinations such as Beijing, Singapore, and Malaysia. However, some people speculated that her clothing export business was merely a cover, a plausible excuse to frequent luxury locations and establish connections with influential figures among the upper class. The exact truth of these claims remains unknown. For Mongolians, Aya was undoubtedly a celebrity, someone everyone knew. It was no surprise that the Mongolian embassy staff quickly changed their attitude upon hearing her name. At first, Malaysian police did not take Aya's disappearance seriously. Fortunately, the Mongolian embassy in Thailand applied pressure on Malaysian authorities, suggesting that foul play might be involved. However, the Malaysian police investigation faced unusual obstacles. Each time a new lead appeared, it mysteriously disappeared. A pattern those investigators found extremely strange. Some investigators even stated they felt there was an invisible hand deliberately obstructing the progress of the case. More than a month later, Malaysian police finally located Aya in a remote area in Shah Alam, near the Malaysian capital, Kuala Lumpur. To be precise, what they found was a pile of fragments. The scene was so horrific that several police officers were unable to endure it, vomiting repeatedly. A DNA test confirmed that the remains belonged to Aya, the woman they had been desperately searching for. So, who had Aya offended to meet such a tragic end? A thorough examination of Aya's remains revealed not only 2 gunshot wounds, but also traces of explosives. From the evidence at the scene, investigators deduced that Aya had been tied to a tree, and C4 plastic explosives had been strapped to her body and detonated. C4 is a highly stable explosive that can be molded into any shape. It is well known for its military and specialized use. However, in Malaysia, C4 explosives are not readily accessible. Only the government and police forces have the means to obtain such materials. At this point, investigators realized that this case was far from ordinary. It very likely involved high-ranking officials in Malaysia, leading them to suspect a far-reaching and politically sensitive conspiracy. After news broke that Aya had been blown up, both the people of Malaysia and Mongolia were left in shock. The use of explosives in such a cruel and ruthless manner was unheard of, and the Mongolian public felt an added sense of outrage. Aya, a well-known figure in Mongolia, had died so tragically in Malaysia, allegedly with the involvement of high-ranking Malaysian officials. The public quickly began to pressure their respective governments. Mongolian citizens demanded justice, while the Mongolian government applied diplomatic pressure on Malaysia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The Malaysian police, tasked with investigating the case, were under immense pressure. On one hand, the case had diplomatic implications with Mongolia. On the other, it appeared that high-ranking Malaysian officials might be involved. Investigators reportedly felt conflicted, unsure whether to pursue a thorough investigation or merely go through the motions. However, under mounting public pressure and the strict demands of the Mongolian government, the investigation proceeded. As the probe deepened, shocking truths gradually came to light. Malaysian police meticulously reviewed Aya's relationships, combined with information provided by her cousin Radna, and quickly identified a prime suspect, Abdul Razak Baginda. Abdul Razak Baginda was no ordinary person. At the time, he was a senior member of the Malaysian Strategic Research Center, and also served as an advisor to Malaysia's Ministry of Defense. Investigators discovered that Abdul and Aya had been in a romantic relationship for some time. According to Radna, Aya's life had changed significantly around 2004. Her financial situation improved, and she began frequent trips to Malaysia, evidently to be with Abdul. Whenever Abdul traveled overseas for work, Aya often accompanied him. Fluent in several languages, Aya served as his translator during these trips. Aya even showed Radna photos of herself traveling abroad with Abdul. But as the saying goes, one who walks in the dark will eventually stumble. By 2006, Aya, at 28 years old, became pregnant. For Abdul, this was anything but good news. Abdul was already married with a 19-year-old daughter, and more importantly, he was a public figure. In the eyes of the Malaysian public, he had the reputation of being a good husband and upright man. If Aya's pregnancy and their relationship were exposed, It would surely ruin his political career and possibly cost him his job. In contrast, Aya saw her pregnancy as leverage. She hoped to secure a legitimate status for herself and pressured Abdul to divorce his wife. Naturally, Abdul refused. To him, Aya was nothing more than a fling, a beautiful distraction. Their relationship began to sour, with frequent arguments erupting between them. This time, Aya traveled to Malaysia with her cousin Radna to confront Abdul directly. If she could not secure a formal relationship, she would at least demand a large financial settlement, a kind of compensation for her youth and the expenses of raising his child. The result, however, was far more tragic. Aya mysteriously disappeared and was later found brutally murdered in the forest. Given the circumstances and Abdul's clear motive, he became an obvious suspect in the case. During the next phase of the investigation, 3 other key suspects were arrested, all of whom were police officers. Among them, 2 had particularly notable identities: Azilah Hadri, 30 years old, and Sirul Azhar Umar, 35 years old. Both men were former members of Malaysia's Special Actions Unit, UTK, an elite division under the Royal Malaysian Police that handles serious crimes and counterterrorism operations. In addition to their roles as police officers, Azilah and Sirul held another important position. They served as bodyguards to the then Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Defense, Najib Razak. Following the arrest of Azilah and Sirul, the case of Altantuya became even more sensational. The involvement of government officials and top police officers created shockwaves across Malaysia. As the news spread, it became evident to many that this case ran deeper than initially thought. According to police investigations, Azilah and Sirul had no personal connection to the victim, Altantuya Shaariibuugiin. In fact, they had never met her before. In their statements, Azilah and Sirul claimed they were acting under orders. The question then arose: whose orders were they following? The answer pointed directly to Abdul Razak Baginda, the man already under police suspicion. Upon this discovery, police arrested Abdul. He admitted to having had a relationship with Altantuya, but vehemently denied any involvement in orchestrating her murder. Despite his denial, Abdul was charged with abetting the murder. Meanwhile, Azilah and Sirul were charged with murder. At this stage, the details of the case seemed clear-cut. Abdul was accused of ordering the killing, while Azilah and Sirul were implicated as the perpetrators. The next step was to await the court's verdict. But wait, was it really that simple? A closer look revealed troubling questions. Altantuya's initial demand was for recognition as Abdul's legitimate partner. When that failed, she asked for financial compensation. For Abdul, a powerful and wealthy figure in Malaysia, meeting either of these demands should not have been difficult. He had money and influence, and the situation could have been resolved quietly without resorting to violence. Why then would Abdul take such an extreme and risky measure to silence Altantuya? Why risk his career and future by involving explosives and murder? The use of C4 explosives, a material accessible only to military and police forces, raised further suspicions. Could this case involve something far more sinister than a crime of passion? Was the love affair merely a cover-up for a larger conspiracy? Indeed, not long after, a French journalist named Arnaud Dubus conducted an in-depth investigation and published a groundbreaking report in the French newspaper Libération. In his article, Arnaud pointed out that the murder of Aya was very likely connected to a major scandal involving the Malaysian government. In March 2005, Aya and Abdul Razak Baginda traveled together to Europe. On the surface, this trip appeared to be a vacation, but in reality, Abdul was there acting as a weapons broker on behalf of then Deputy Prime Minister Najib Razak. At that time, they were negotiating the purchase of 2 Scorpène-class submarines from France. Prior to this, on June 5, 2002, Malaysia had signed a contract to purchase the submarines. Abdul's visit to Europe was intended to finalize specific details of the deal. Since sensitive information was likely involved in the transaction, Abdul chose not to hire a professional interpreter and instead brought Aya as his personal translator. The arms deal was quickly finalized, But the real controversy lay in the $114 million commission that was allegedly paid out and transferred to a company controlled by Abdul's wife. It was widely understood that this commission was a kickback. The massive sum of $114 million was likely split between Najib Razak and Abdul. Such misappropriation of state funds for personal gain was a scandal that could not afford to see the light of day. Aya, having been directly involved in the process as a translator, essentially became a ticking time bomb, a liability that needed to be contained. To keep her silent, Abdul reportedly promised Aya USD $500,000 as hush money. However, for reasons unknown, this payment was continuously delayed. Aya repeatedly demanded the promised sum, but Abdul kept stalling. On October 19, 2006, the day Aya went missing, she went to confront Abdul one last time, demanding the USD $500,000 that was rightfully hers. However, this confrontation led to her tragic fate. This revelation suggested that Aya's murder was not merely a crime of passion. Instead, it raised the alarming possibility that Abdul Razak Baginda and Najib Razak orchestrated Aya's murder to cover up the massive bribery scandal surrounding the submarine deal. Arnaud's expose elevated the case to a global scandal, causing widespread shock and outrage. If the allegations were true, they implicated not only Malaysia's Deputy Prime Minister Najib Razak, but also exposed large-scale government corruption. Critically, certain suspicious details emerged. Police could not find any immigration records of Aya entering Malaysia, and all airport surveillance footage of her arrival had mysteriously been erased. Such actions were clearly beyond the capabilities of an ordinary person, further reinforcing suspicions of high-level interference. At this point, Najib Razak found himself at the center of the storm. In response to mounting pressure, Abdul Razak Baginda publicly declared that he had, in fact, been in a relationship with Aya, but denied Najib's involvement, stating, "Najib has nothing to do with this. What I am saying now is exactly what I told the police."
And what I have said today to all of you is what I told the police. That Datuk Najib had never met the deceased. How do I know? It's like asking me, I know. Okay? I know.
Shortly after, Deputy Prime Minister Najib Razak also addressed the allegations, stating, "I do not know Aya. The claims made by the journalist are fabricated lies and slander." To further emphasize his innocence, Najib swore an oath in a mosque, a culturally significant and serious act. However, Aya's cousin, Radna, had a different account. She claimed that her cousin once showed her a photograph of Abdul Razak Baginda, Najib Razak, and Aya having dinner together at a restaurant. According to Radna, the relationship between the three was complex, and she was certain that Najib did know Aya. Curiously, after publishing his explosive investigation, Arnaud Dubois suddenly disappeared. It was rumored that he went into hiding out of fear of retaliation. At this point, another key figure emerged: P. Balasubramaniam, a private investigator hired by Abdul Razak Baginda. He issued a shocking statutory declaration, claiming that Najib Razak and Aya had a romantic relationship and that Najib had passed Aya to Abdul to avoid complications. Furthermore, he alleged that on the day Aya disappeared, it was Najib's special aide who had taken her away, suggesting that Najib could not escape involvement in her death. However, in a dramatic twist, Balasubramaniam retracted his statement the very next day. Shortly after, he and his entire family disappeared. For 15 months, there was no trace of him, until he resurfaced in India. This time, Balasubramaniam revealed the truth behind his sudden retraction. He had been paid 5 million ringgits in hush money to withdraw his allegations. He insisted that his original statement, implicating Najib, was true. Balasubramaniam further emphasized, "As long as Najib remains in power, I will never return to Malaysia. On October 31, 2008, due to the disappearance of the private investigator P. Balasubramaniam and the French journalist Arnaud Dubus, two critical witnesses, and the lack of solid evidence, the High Court declared Abdul Razak Baginda not guilty, and he was released. In contrast, the trial of the two bodyguards, Azilah Hadri and Sirul Azhar Umar, proceeded. The police managed to gather 84 witnesses, including some who directly saw the two men taking Ayah away. Furthermore, they did not dispute the prosecution's accusations that they had used explosives to kill Ayah in the forest. After a lengthy 159-day trial on April 9, 2009, the High Court found Azilah and Sirul guilty of murder. The two men showed no surprise at the verdict but announced they would appeal. Interestingly, their families did not object to the ruling and emphasized that there was no political element involved in the case. However, Ayah's parents and cousin refused to accept this outcome. They believed that Azilah and Sirul had simply followed orders from superiors and that the real mastermind had yet to be punished. As a result, Ayah's family filed an appeal and demanded compensation of 100 million ringgit from the Malaysian government, Abdul Razak Baginda, and Najib Razak for the suffering caused by Ayah's death. Unfortunately, this lawsuit faced constant delays. Years passed, and by 2013 the Court of Appeal heard the appeals filed by Azilah and Sirul. This time the case took a dramatic turn. On August 23, 2013, the Court of Appeal ruled that Azilah and Sirul had no motive to kill Ayah. Additionally, during the initial trial, Najib's special aide, who had allegedly been seen taking Ayah away, was not summoned to testify. The court declared that the lack of concrete evidence was significant and therefore overturned the previous ruling, declaring Azilah and Sirul not guilty and ordering their release. This verdict came as a shock. Not only were the people of Mongolia outraged, but even many Malaysians found the result absurd and laughable. Dissatisfied with the ruling, the prosecution appealed to the federal court. On January 13, 2015, the case took yet another 180-degree turn. The federal court overturned the not guilty ruling and reinstated the death sentences for both Azilah and Sirul. However, by this time, Sirul Azhar Umar had fled Malaysia. Immediately after being declared not guilty in 2013, he had escaped to Australia. Although Interpol issued a red notice for Sirul's arrest and he was detained in Australia, the Australian government refused to extradite him back to Malaysia due to their laws prohibiting extradition to countries where the death penalty is enforced. As a result, Sirul remained detained in Australia, while Azilah was taken into custody by Malaysian authorities to await further developments in the case. Najib Razak became the 6th Prime Minister of Malaysia in 2009 and successfully retained his position in the 2013 general election. However, during the 14th general election in 2018, Najib faced a crushing defeat. That same year, Ayah's family submitted a petition to the courts demanding a retrial of the case. They argued that the true mastermind behind the murder remained free from justice. The timing of their request was deliberate. Najib was no longer the Prime Minister, creating an opportunity to reopen the investigation. The new Prime Minister expressed support for their demand. On December 16, 2019, Azilah Hadri, who was sentenced to death, issued a stunning statement through his lawyer. He claimed that Najib Razak was the mastermind behind Ayah's murder. According to Azilah, Najib had personally ordered the elimination of Ayah, alleging that she was a foreign spy, posing a threat to national security. Najib, Azilah claimed, even made a slitting throat gesture to emphasize his order. Azilah also alleged that Najib authorized them to access explosives from the police storage to destroy all evidence. As members of Malaysia's Special Actions Unit, UTK, Azilah and Sirul claimed they had no choice but to follow orders. Azilah explained that he remained silent for years because Najib's position as Prime Minister made him fear retaliation. However, now that Najib had been removed from power, Azilah felt safe enough to speak out. He further stated that if the case were retried, he would reveal even more shocking truths and expressed remorse to Ayah's family. At the same time, Sirul Azhar Umar, who remains in Australia, also proclaimed his innocence. He stated that if he were released, he would expose the entire truth of the case. Despite these revelations, the retrial of the case has not yet taken place. While reviewing the case documents, it became evident that the records are extremely complex and contradictory. The involvement of multiple government agencies in this case suggests that the authenticity of publicly released materials may have been influenced by high-ranking officials. Though specific details remain disputed, the overall narrative remains clear. Aya, a celebrity from Mongolia, met her tragic end in Malaysia under circumstances involving high-level Malaysian officials. There are even rumors in Malaysia that Abdul Razak Baginda's wife may have been involved. Upon discovering her husband's relationship with Aya, she allegedly orchestrated Aya's murder to silence her. In truth, she likely possessed the means and connections to carry out such an act. One particularly intriguing aspect of this case is that, from the start, there was very little evidence. Aya's immigration records and airport surveillance footage had been deliberately erased. In theory, this should have made the investigation impossible to continue. Yet for some reason, new clues repeatedly emerged, allowing investigators to press on. Some have speculated that the case was, in fact, part of a power struggle between Najib and his political rivals, who may have used the case as a weapon to bring him down. Although the investigation and trials were extremely complicated, and individuals like Azilah and Sirul were punished, many people continue to believe that what Azilah and Sirul said is true. They merely followed orders. After all, they did not know Aya personally. So, who exactly was the mastermind behind Aya's murder? To this day, the case remains a dark stain on Malaysia's history, one riddled with unanswered questions, alleged conspiracies, and the shadow of political corruption. A story full of mysteries, schemes, and power struggles. Even though Azilah Hadri directly named Najib Razak as the mastermind behind Aya's murder, the former prime minister has steadfastly maintained his innocence. Najib has since been convicted in a separate corruption case involving the 1MDB scandal, but Aya's case remains unresolved. Will Sirul Azhar Umar, currently imprisoned in Australia, finally speak out to trade the truth for his freedom? Will new evidence ever emerge to bring the entire truth to light? The answers remain shrouded in darkness, hidden behind the veil of power and political maneuvering. The fate of Aya, a young, beautiful, and talented woman, was cruelly buried in a web of conspiracies. Her death serves as a painful reminder of the dark side of power, the fragility of justice, and the secrets that may remain buried forever. Aya's story continues to haunt the people of Malaysia and Mongolia, a relentless call for truth and justice. Will the day come when the full truth is finally revealed? We can only hope. This concludes today's video. Thank you for watching, and see you again in our next story. Goodbye. Peace.